class. I want to apologize up front for the sound going in and out. I noticed that when I made the other one. I do not have a microphone, but I'm using my computer's microphone, and it goes in and out without me even moving. It's just the way this flash recorder renders my volume. I'm going to go to the second part of your programming labs. You have 3 mini labs here. And I have a video to show you how to work that, and I'm expecting you guys to run your code, cut and paste your code and your output into a Word document, and there should be 3 separate code and output screenshots, and then turn it in for a grade. I don't want to really micro teach every little detail for this coding, but since we're just really starting to code in C, I'm going to show you how to write the centigrade to Fahrenheit problem. And I wrote in here some coding notes and asking you to tell me how many variables do you need for converting centigrade to Fahrenheit. Just 2. One, you're getting input from the user, and the other, you're outputting Fahrenheit. You're asking, what's the centigrade? And here's the Fahrenheit. That's it. It's very simple. I mean, we had 2 inputs for the length and width program here when we calculated the area and the perimeter of a rectangle. What I've been using is Repellent, and I've got the code already written. It's right here. I've declared 2 variables of float type. Instead of integer, we're doing float because we're dealing with decimals. Then I ask the user to enter the centigrade, but for every prompt, if I want input, I have to have a scanf. So this time we're scanning in a float type, so we need to use the placeholder %f. That is how we tell the compiler we're getting a float from the user. And then, of course, my variable is named C, and when we use the %C, we're basically telling the compiler, I want you to put it at the address where the variable C is located. It was declared here, it's put in memory while the program's running, and you tell the compiler, hey, put whatever the user typed here in this location. If they type anything other than a float, I mean, maybe an integer will work, but if they type a string or a word, it's going to break right here. Then I cut and paste the code. I'm using all lowercase, and the code in your example of the assignment has an uppercase F and an uppercase C, so keep that in mind. So I just copied the code here and changed the variables to lowercase. And there's the formula. And then I output the answer, and I made sure I did a new line before the answer was output, and I said I want 4 decimal places. So my first run, I entered 0 for centigrade, and then it gave me 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Right, that's it for that code. Let's go to the next one. The next one I'm asking, and this is from the book, to write a program that converts and prints a user-supplied measurement in inches. So they're going to input yard. It's going to be 36 inches for each yard. So if they put 3 yards in, it's yards times 36. That's your answer. I'm going to do the first one, and you can do the next 2 yourself. You're going to get input from the user in centigrade form, and you're going to output how many inches. Same way with the meter. So I'm going to go ahead and use my code for the Fahrenheit one that we just wrote. Now I suggested some input values for variables as yards, centa, meter, and remember, you're the programmer. You can name your variables any way you want to. YRDS, just Y, and C and M. But also, though, you need to name it something you can remember and what the values are going to be held in those variables. Also, we'll need some output. We're going to have variables to hold the yard and inches answer, and the centigrade and inches answer, and inches. So these are just suggestions. And the formula for one of them would be yards to inches equals yards times 36, like I said. So let's look at how we write the code. Remember, in code we have three parts: input, processing, which is calculation, and output. In this example, we had declaration, input, 2 lines of code for input, calculation, processing right here, and then the output. And of course, in C programming, we always have these other syntax that we need to make sure that the compiler understands, the C compiler understands what we mean. Remember what include stdio.h is? It's a library that lets us use the standard input and output methods like printf, scanf. This is for output, this is for input, and those are just basic. All right, I'm going to ask the user, first of all, I need some variables here, so I'm going to have yards as an input and yards to inches as an output. I'm going to ask the user to enter the yards, and then I'm going to see how easy it is just to calculate it. What's the formula for it? We want the answer, yards to inches. It's going to hold the answers, right? Equals what? Yards times 36. Don't forget the semicolon. Then we're going to output the inches from yards is us. I'm going to only have 2 decimal places, not 4. And what's this variable name? Yards to inches. You may want a smaller variable name, but I'm going to use the big one, and it's wrapping only because the screen is not large enough for you to see all the code on one line. This should work. Uh-oh, it doesn't like this. Why doesn't it like it? Oh, it's because I didn't type it right. A lot of times you can just cut and paste so that you, instead of having to worry about spelling it, you can just paste the one you're using. So all 3 parts where we declare the variable, we calculate the value that's going to be held in the variable, and then we output the variable. We input it with yards, and we tell the compiler, oh, it's going to go to where yards is sitting in memory. We use yards with the input from the user, calculate it, and then we output it. Let's see if this works. Three yards, how many inches? 36 times 3. Let me do another one. 2 yards, 72 inches. There you go. Now what do you have to do? You have to do centimeter and meters. So you're going to declare the input value like meters or centimeters. You'll need 2, 1 for each. You'll need 2 variables for each problem. And you're going to get input from the user. So you'll put this, maybe you'll make a comment. Remember, comments in C are like, this is the yards to inches part. And you can do another part here. You say centimeters to inches. And then you put the code there, and then you can put meters to inches. And your code goes there. You can initialize all your variables in the same area here. And then you can could add your print statements, your input area, and your calculation and your output all in one group right here. Just to keep it separate from the user, because if I asked for yards and then I asked for, you can do them all at once. You can ask for yards, you can ask for centimeters, and you can ask for meters, and then you can output all three at one time too. Or you can write your code in each section. That's up to you. Happy programming.